Hey guys, this is Green Guy with Green Guy Finance. Coming at you with take 20 or whatever this is of this video. It's been a bit of a struggle. Honestly, it's a little different for me. This video's theme is bad trades, bad losses, and how you deal with those. And I keep revising it because it's a very difficult lesson to learn, an important one to learn. And communicating all of that to people is not easy, I don't think. But had to do a 180 from today's trades. JD and LinkedIn had some good money made off those to this. It's a whole other world. But this is much more important than what I could teach you ever about my gains. Ever, ever, ever. A loss is the most important thing you're going to learn. Period. Through and through. How you deal with a loss, whether you acknowledge a loss or you ignore it, and your resolution out of that is everything to what you're going to be as a trader. Period. In my opinion, period. This is your test as to what you're going to become. Right here is a loss. And I can't overstate that enough. Like I said, this is not an easy lesson to say. I actually had to do a couple takes, like I was saying, and I had to call in some reinforcements. I went on and grabbed a beer across the street and a slice of pizza, and I called my corporate attorney. Because naturally, being an attorney, he's full of shit and he's always full of good quips. So he gave me his 2 cents and helped me think it through a little bit better. But this is something that cannot be overstated and cannot be analyzed enough. So I don't think this is going to be the first video I ever deal with this to help you guys deal with this. But this is a very personal one for me. That hopefully you take away some of what I learned off of this, so that you avoid some of the things that I fell into. And at the same time, if you fall into some of the bad paths off of a bad trade, that fear, that denial, that loss of confidence that sticks, you acknowledge it and you're more able to bounce out of that. So that's my goal out of this, is that you learn the cycle so that at least you're aware of it. But dealing with it, you really need a group, in my opinion, to come out of it. It's difficult doing it on your own, because in a lot of ways trading is a Zen thing. It's not just the market you're fighting, you're fighting constantly yourself and the market. If you're a really ambitious trader, you're going to come across this a couple times where you do have these situations, these bad losses, those red candles that you lose sleep over. And it's everything to who you're going to become. But you should come out of it trading with confidence eventually. But it is a process. It is a process. So anyways, the chart I'm going to show you on my loss was ONVO of almost a year ago in November. Appropriately enough, it's been almost a full year since this trade happened, this loss I'm going to show you. And I think the first thing I'd like to show you is why I got into the stock to begin with. ONVO, the backstory on this is it's a 3D printing company, and their big claim at that point last year was 3D printed liver cells leading up to fully printed 3D printed organs. That was their goal, was by, I think their stated goal was 2020, they were going to have a 3D printed liver. And they'd been working with universities. I remember seeing they had a patent on the vasculature of 3D printed related things, etc. So they did have a couple patents that were absolutely valid. But the real reason I got into it was I caught the company. It was exciting tech, but really was this. This is my son. My son was the reason I got into this stock to begin with. That's Matthew, my son. But Matthew, there we go, was born with one ear. And I started reading about 3D printing because I saw in the Wall Street Journal in London they'd been growing 3D printed ears and transplanting them, and I got really excited about the sector. So I read about it and I found ONVO online, and I'd been following it for a couple months before I took this loss. But that's really the reason I got in, was this emotional tie to the whole issue. This is Matthew, you understand. So there he is eating chips. Good eater. And that's him with his glasses. I picked this picture out because it took him a long time to understand why his glasses kept slumping. It's because he doesn't have a fully formed deer. But, you know, as a parent, you really want to do the best for your kids, and that emotional tie carries through to a lot of things. If you take the personal and put it into the market, even though it is a human thing to do, that emotional tie, it's never a good way to start off a trade. This is your money, the chart, the price action, and it is cold, and it is calculating. And if you forget that this is a market out to get you at any given moment, you're gonna end up with a world of pain sooner or later. You must be paranoid, in my opinion. You must acknowledge that there are manipulations going on constantly. And you must learn your lessons. You must. So, 3D printing sector, I think a little lead up to Organovo, at that point where I was as a trader, is pretty quick, is through my corporate attorney, he'd hosted a party, and I met my programmer at a party, Amazon program, and we founded an analytics firm about 2 years before this trade. Those of you who've been following me for a while know that I'm a medical doctor, in addition to being a trader, and a lot of the statistics that were being used were my statistics based on biotechs at the time when we first started doing this. So we've been following biotechs with predictive news catalysts in relation to these stocks, and then doing a what you'd call in medicine a cohort study or a retrospective study. Basically, you'd take old news and old price action, plug it in, and see if your algorithm came out with a good trade or a nonsensical trade. And we'd come out with an algorithm that was doing very well and plugged it into a couple, and the algorithm gave us Organovo. So our algorithm, our proprietary formula, gave us the stock and the trade. But it still ended up being a loss. I'm going to show you exactly what happened with that. So, followed it back here, summer, had a nice little bump, bought some stock. Followed the sector, the 3D printing sector, for quite a while. Let's see. Triple D, the sector was doing pretty well. You can see it was sort of oscillating down at the bottom, Triple D, and then had a nice little spike towards the end of the year. A lot of the other 3D printers followed that same trend. Stratasys here had a nice little bump towards the end of the year. And then this is the epitome of the 3D printing sector nonsense that came out of that last year, was CAMT, Camtech Limited, which was basically the same company throughout this entire timeline you're looking at. So nothing had changed throughout this entire time, August to the end of the year, except that at the end of the year, they'd started to say, well, don't you sort of do 3D printing? And CAMT said, well, yeah, I guess we do. and that's when you see the shoot-off. Was nothing changing except for a label. They're suddenly a 3D printing company. So the sector was becoming nonsensical. Bringing us back to Organovo here, which had a nice bump up at the end of the year also. So our algorithm, taking you through the trade, caught Organovo, let's see, right here on the 11th, or we caught it on the 11th, tradable. So at this point, you have a plan in place. You always have to have a plan in place for a stock. That is a lesson to be learned. Always have a plan. What a plan makes you do is define your risk and reward. You have to say, I expect my gains to be ... An acceptable loss for this kind of trade in my mind is ... And my risk and reward is take the ratio into consideration and then take into consideration the percent of times you are right and wrong. Don't just do the by-the-book definition of this is my loss and this is my gain. I expect a 200% gain. I'm willing to accept a 50% loss. Don't take that ratio, okay? Take the percent of times in your trading you're right and wrong, because a risk reward is lesson 1, okay? There are strategies where you will lose 9 times out of 10. And the 10th time, you will make so much money, you will cover the other 9 losses, and then some. I employ many of these, but some of you may not. Some of you may be, I need to win on 9 out of 10 trades. And that 1 out of 10 times I lose. What is that? That is something you have to define in a risk-reward scenario Absolutely, because that 1 out of 10 times could wipe those other 9 gains. So some of you, long-term trading, have inappropriate strategies. You have to look at that through and through. That's part of becoming a good long-term trader. Okay? Have a plan. What is my loss limit? Okay? I have defined it. So for me, on this trade, I had calls riding up, bought weeklies. My weeklies went up and my weeklies expired, and then I got a new week, and I bought more calls, saying it was an emotional play for me. To be honest, that was all it was we had not quite a doji, but pretty much flat action for 2 days. And I was thinking, this thing looks like it might be bull flagging. Well, that's not exactly what happened, was it? It had a big red candle opening up and a huge fall throughout the rest of the day. If you have a ratio of your risk reward and you have that percent applied, you should always close your position if your plan goes against you. Because, number 2 here, okay, if your plan breaks, it is far too tempting to say, I was right. In psychology, the strongest defense is denial. You see it through and through, especially with trauma. DABDA, that's something that they teach people dealing with cancer. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. That's the phases of mourning that you go through. Trauma. You see the same thing with marketing and these things. You do see that quite a bit. You're going to go through denial to bargaining really quick. That's the problem. So you're going to end up coming with a new plan. That's a second plan. Never do a second plan, especially with options. That's how you become a bag holder. And with a bag holder with options, it doesn't work out because you lose everything. So I'll talk you through the rest of my trade here. So I made this great gain on the way up, and then I had this horrible loss leading into another loss. And at this point, the last day here, what I had was about an 80% loss that I was still holding, saying, well, it hasn't bottomed out to its 703 level. I think it could rightly bound back up. I don't see this nonsense. I really think it's a good company. It had quite a bit of bad pieces come out in the past days. It's an overvalued company. Their patents are worthless. There's another Chinese company doing the same thing. Yada, yada, yada. But your emotions take over. I'm a behavioral market analyst. Those of you who follow. I was following for some of the flaws that I actually employ when I make my trades that I make gains off of. Emotions got in the way, absolutely. So an 80% loss, what is the difference between an 80% and a 90% loss on your position? You're losing half of what you had. Think about that. If you have 20% left and you are going down another 10%, you're losing half of what you have remaining. You have to cut losses short early. You must. And stick to your plan. Always stick to your plan. Never reform it. So that took me through the plan and the plan being broken. Let's talk about what happened after this, because this is the point where you really learn the most. You had a bad trade. Not a bad loss. They're good losses. They're great losses. You take your loss and you walk away and you say, that's that. My ratio and my trading is going to come out because I know my risk rewards. But here you are and you down and you have a bad loss. Let's talk about that process, because that happened to me. So things I've learned about that. 1, always, initial reaction, walk away, forget about trading, take a day off, because you're going to have days you shouldn't be thinking about trading anymore. You have this bubbling in the back of your head. So I find pizza, beer, and a movie. It works. You deal with it. You just sort of have to act depressed a little bit. I find after that, you come to a little mini resolution. It starts bubbling in the back of your head. What happened? And you go through that. You say, okay, I was wrong there. I got to rethink that. Okay, the rethinking is step 2. Okay? When you come back to the market the next day, you're still rethinking things, absolutely. But at that point, you at least have acknowledged the process. So you're going to be a little less confident, but you're going to be right back at it. Okay? And then hopefully that acknowledgement and that process will lead you to a resolution. Okay? But the worst thing is denial. It happens that day, I'm jumping right back in, I'm going with the same flaws. It's better to come back less confident, people. I would say that. And then you'll rise out of it with a better attitude and spirit and be willing to trade better. That's what I got. Hope you guys enjoyed it.